Salam world! I'm your shorter than average girl from down under, and today we're going to do the 6th installment in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Silver Chair. So The Silver Chair is actually the 4th novel that C.S. Lewis wrote after The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. It follows the protagonist Eustace Scrubb now that the Pevensies are not allowed in Narnia anymore, and it's about his adventure with his friend in trying to find Prince Caspian's son Rilian. This book is shorter than the other installments in the Chronicles of Narnia, but that doesn't mean that it compromises on quality. It's actually one of the easier books to read out of the Chronicles because it doesn't have so much hidden symbolism in it. It's a perfect place for kids to start. So the book review is going to be at the end of the video. You can get to that if you want by going forward to this time or clicking the timestamp in the description, whichever suits you best. But for now, let's talk stories. Only starts a few months after the end of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. It's the time where everyone has to go back to school, so Eustace has to say goodbye to Edmund and Lucy. And he goes to the super prestigious experimental school, which he doesn't like because he gets bullied significantly over there. And again, the book starts with him being bullied and running away to find one of his other classmates who's being bullied as well, Jill Pole. He then entrusts Jill with the secret of what happened to him over the summer, his adventures in Narnia. Although she doesn't believe him at first, he tells her that he can get her out of this mess if together they try to get to Narnia. So she's gonna take her chances. It's better than being bullied, right? They both turn towards the east and call for Aslan. And as they do, Aslan transports them to the land in the east. Poe's pretty shook by what has just happened, and so she tries to tease Eustace a bit by almost going over a cliff. In attempts to save her, Eustace ends up falling. Now, Jill feels pretty bad for what she's done, but this is where Aslan comes to her, and he tells her that he sent for them. Jill's pretty confused, because they're the one who called for Aslan, not the other way around. But Aslan responds to her by saying, "You won't call to me unless I call to you." So he tells her that he's brought them because he needs their help. He wants them to find the lost Prince Rilian. So before we get too far, let's see what actually happened to Rilian. After sending Reepicheep to the east, Prince Caspian returns to Ramandu's island and asks Lillindel's hand in marriage, to which she accepts. And a while later, they end up having a baby boy, Rilian. Now, Caspian absolutely adored his wife and son, and things are well and happy for a very long time. Rilian turns 11 years old and he's enjoying life. One day, he decides to take his mother and a party to celebrate the beautiful weather out in the countryside. Unfortunately, while him and his party are just away from the queen, a snake comes and bites Queen Lilindel. This bite results in the passing of the queen. This absolutely shattered Caspian and he went into a great depression. On the contrary, Rilian went into a rage, swearing that he would avenge his mother by slaying the snake. It's been years and Rilian's been traveling out here and there to find the snake to slay it, but to no avail. One day, Lord Drillian, which is the guy who captained the Dawn Treader, decides to come with Rilian to one of his adventures, but finds that Rilian has long forgotten his plot for revenge, but was actually out there stalking a beautiful lady, the Lady of the Green Kirtle. Rilian was mesmerized by her, and one day he just never came back. Julian sent parties and parties trying to look for the prince, but unfortunately, he was never found. This broke Caspian even further, and he's been broken ever since.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
As Caspian approaches the end of his life, he wants to consult Aslan to see what he should do about Narnia. He no longer has an heir, and given that he had heard news that Aslan was somewhere in the east, he was going to voyage there once more to speak to him. And this is where our protagonist comes in. Aslan tells Jill that the prince is in fact alive and that he is going to give her 4 signs that they should follow so that they can find the prince. Sign 1. As soon as Eustace lands in Narnia, he's going to see an old friend. He must greet this old friend, and if he does, you will have great help. Sign 2 was that you must travel north to the land of the giants, where there lays an ancient giant city. Number 3. In the city there is a large stone with carving on it. You must do exactly what the carving says. And the final sign, the first person that you meet on your adventure, which will ask you for something in my name, the name of Aslan, will be the prince. He then tells Jill to remember the signs and warns her that these signs will not look like how he has described them. That whenever she wakes up or goes to sleep, that she should recite the signs to herself and not heed any appearances. And so he sends Eustace and Jill into Narnia, where they see a procession of people and an old man going into a ship. Jill asks Eustace if he recognizes anyone, but he says he doesn't. A owl overhears their conversation, and when they tell the owl what they're here for, he says that they must meet with the Grand Chancellor Trumpkin to discuss the matter. Trumpkin dismisses them, saying that he'll meet them in the morning, but during the night, the owl comes and says that they must go at once. Eustace and Jill follow the owl, and the owl explains to them that Trumpkin has been instructed to prevent anyone from looking for the prince by Caspian, because so many knights had fallen in their attempts to find the prince, and Caspian cannot bear the thought of losing anyone else. The owls themselves can't help because Eustace and Jill would need to travel during the morning and owls have to travel by night. So they send them to the Marshwiggles, a group of these weird-looking humanoid gnomes, I think you could describe them. They meet a Marshwiggle called Puddleglum, who is going to be their guide into the north. As they are traveling to the north, the cold absolutely devours them, and they would wish for anything just to be in a warm area. Just then, they meet a lovely lady in green and a knight in black armor across the bridge. When they speak to this lady and the man does not respond. But the lady, she tells them that, oh, she hasn't heard of anyone going to the ancient city of the giants, but there is a modern city of the giants just up there, and they would be happy to welcome them. Just say that it's from the Lady of the Green Kirtle. Eustace and Polly thank her, however, Puddleglum is not too keen on this idea, and they end up going to the giants. On the way to the city of the giants, Jill ends up falling in what looks like a trench. Eustace follows her to see whether there could be some shelter, but unfortunately they get just stuck in what looks like a closed E. So they end up getting out and ignore this. The giants do indeed welcome them, telling them that they should stay for the autumn feast. They are then bathed and clothed and treated with royalty, only to find out that they are the autumn feast. The Lady of the Green Kettle knew this all along and was setting them up. When they end up finding out that they are food, they decide to make an escape plan. When they look out the window, they discover that they had walked past the ancient city. And then right in front of the window, there is a giant stone which says, "Under me." Jill feels absolutely stupid for missing the first three signs. The first one being that the old man going on the ship was Prince Caspian and that Eustace needed to introduce himself to him so that potentially he could get some help, knowing that Aslan had sent Eustace and Jill to him. Two, they had made it to the ancient city, but because they were so cold and there was a huge snow blizzard, they weren't paying attention to their surroundings, and Jill ended up falling into the E of "under me," which means that they had actually come across the stone they were meant to follow. But no heed. Now that they know what they need to do, they were going to do it. Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum end up escaping from the giants and making it to the stone, where they find a trap door. Under the trap door, they find an entire world underground. The inhabitants of this world were grimy old gnomes that didn't really seem to do anything except follow their queen, a witch known as the Lady of the Green Kirtle. The lady isn't here, however, the head of her army is. So the gnomes end up taking them to this man. This man recognizes them. He says, "Oh, remember we met at the bridge?" And so they realize that he must have been the knight in the black armor. He tells them that the lady is a very nice person and that the people in Overland, aka Narnia, were oppressive, and so they were forming their armies to attack them, and that he himself would be the head of this army. Just as he was explaining all this, gnomes come and tell him that it is the time. Time for what, you ask? The captain says that he is cursed. Every night he goes into a fit, a rage, and then turns into a green snake, becoming a danger for everyone. So, to prevent that, his lady has created a silver chair where every night he is bound to it, so that in his episode he cannot harm anyone. He tells the three that "I would prefer you not watch, but if you want, you can hide behind there. But whatever you do, do not listen to me while I'm under the curse. Ignore everything that I say, and definitely do not untie me." As soon as the captain is tied to the silver chair, a switch is flicked in his head, and he starts cursing and saying, "Get me out of here. This witch has me bound." He sees the three and he begs for them. He's like, "This is my opportunity. Let me free so that I may be lifted from this curse. During the day, I'm under her enchantment, and so is every gnome underground. She wants to take over Narnia. I am the prince. Release me in the name of Aslan, so I may return to my father." Jill and Eustace were quite hesitant to let him go, not knowing which of the two they should believe, but Puddleglum remembered the final sign, that the prince would be recognized because he would be the first person they meet to ask them for something in the name of Aslan. And so they end up releasing the prince, and he destroys the silver chair. When the lady comes back, she realizes that the gig is up, and so she turns herself into a green snake, the same snake that killed Queen Lilindel. Prince Rilian realizes what this means, and he ends up slaying the snake. As a consequence, every single gnome is broken out of the enchantment, and they thank Rilian for releasing them from her spell. But then Underworld starts to break. Apparently the entire system was kept up by her magic, and so they really needed to get out of here before they are buried alive. Luckily, they find their way back to the surface, and Rilian makes it back to his father, Caspian, who had returned back to Narnia after Aslan tells him to return. Unfortunately, Caspian was brought out on the bed. Rilian meets his father, but that would be the last of it. Caspian has moved on. In their sadness, Jill and Eustace are also pulled away by Aslan, and that's where they meet Caspian again. His body transforming back to his youth, and then him standing up, greeting Aslan, greeting Eustace, hoping to go to Aslan's country. But just before he does that, they have to return Jill and Eustace back to their school and playing a tiny prank on all the bullies. But that's pretty much the end of the Silver Chair. It's a story about how we are guided, but we're not guided in the way that we would think. Appearances are deceiving, and things which look like they are good for us are potentially not. We have to make sure to hold on to the few things that we 100% know are true and stick to them no matter how the world is going to change around us. God always sends his signs to us. We just have to keep our eye out for them and not expect them to look the way that we want them to look. The Silver Chair is one of the simpler stories in the Narnia Chronicles, but that doesn't mean that it isn't less significant than the others. It's still beautiful and powerful in terms of the message that it's trying to send. But because of its simplicity, it makes it a perfect segue for a child to enter the world of fantasy and try to understand the morals that C.S. Lewis is trying to impart on us. And that was The Silver Chair, a beautiful short installment of the Chronicles of Narnia. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out all the other Narnia book reviews and like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on next week's drop. Be brave, be happy, and be kind, and we'll catch you all next time.